Greetings, I'm the Bulgarian Crocodile. Today I'm gonna talk about my top 20 Japanese directors. So this is once again a response video to Solitary Rolling Films' new video series. He did a top 10 Japanese directors list recently, and he also talked about many honorable mentions. But I will have top 20 here because I thought that top 20 would be good for Japanese directors because Japan is my favorite country for cinema. And as I did a top 10 Japanese directors last year, so I thought that top 20 would kind of give me a good reason to remake the list so that it wouldn't be too similar to the video that I did last year. Although the top 10 is actually quite different to the top 10 last year because I changed the order quite a bit, and then there is one new addition to the top 10, I think, but the order is very different as my taste keeps on developing and as I keep thinking about these directors and rewatching and watching their films. Yeah. But go check out Roning's list as well. There is some overlap, but also many differences. But one of the things that me and Ronin have in common when it comes to cinema is that we both really love Japanese cinema, and just like Ronin said on his video that Japan might be his favorite country in general. Yeah, it is for me too, and I can't wait for the day that I can hopefully visit the country in the future. Yeah, but anyway, let's start with these directors. So my number one Japanese director is Yasujirō Ozu. Been a big fan of him since I first got into him in 2017 as a novice cinephile, and I have now watched pretty much all the films that are available because many of his films sadly were lost, so they can't be watched anymore, of course. But I think there is only one or two films that are available that I haven't watched yet. So I'm currently at 34 of 54, and I think, yeah, there's like 36 or something like that films that you can watch from Ozu. Yeah, so you can see that the number that were lost is huge. Yeah. But Ozu is a big kind of a comfort director to me. His films are so peaceful and beautiful and thought-provoking and universal, very humanist. In many ways quite relatable as well, even though the cultural context and the time is very different than now. But still, he somehow managed to make films that speak to many types of people throughout the years. Yeah. Love his aesthetic with those simple still shots that focus on small details in life. Absolutely love that style of his, and it still looks so beautiful today, and it still looks so unique today. Of course, his films have great actors like Setsuko Hara and Shizu Ryu, to name a couple of greats and some of my favorite actors. Yeah. His filmography is very consistent as well. Many of his silent films are very good, but I think most of his best films are from like late spring onwards. Yeah. And he briefly worked with color as well in his last few years. And his color films and his use of color were absolutely amazing. Yeah. But some of my favorites from him are Tokyo Story Late Spring, An Autumn Afternoon might be my favorite one. Tokyo Twilight is amazing and kind of a, you could say, a black sheep in his filmography, as it is probably his darkest film, and there's the aesthetic, the vibe, it feels quite different to most of his films. Then I love Late Autumn. I love Equinox Flower at the End of Summer. Yeah, those are probably my favorite ones. But like I said, I kind of like pretty much all of his films. And I Was Born, but is probably his best silent film. And then if I pick some bit more underrated ones, I think There Was a Father is one, and A Hen in the Wind. Those are also a bit different I would say, and would highly recommend those. And then the floating weeds films are actually something that I don't like as much as other Ozu fans do for some reason, but those are still good movies. But yeah, incredible director. He's so important to me. I think I will always cherish his films, and I think I might like them even more than I do now when I get older because of the themes and stuff. Yeah, the incredible filmmaker. Then we have the one and only Masaki Kobayashi, another very important director for my film journey. As when I watched Harakiri as a novice cinephile, that was a mind-blowing experience and kind of changed my view on films. And then later on, when I first got into the human condition, I was kind of in a cinema rut, and I thought that I was kind of approaching the point of not finding any more great films, which was absolutely stupid of me to think of that because I can still find great films if I want to. Yeah. But yeah, that was such an incredible experience because after I finished the human condition, I thought that, oh, that was the greatest thing I've ever watched, and I still pretty much subscribe to that idea that I had then, and I have since watched it again as well, and it hold up really well on a rewatch. But Kobayashi's films are incredibly dense, they are so layered, so deep, and the layers go so much beyond what you see in the surface, like Harakiri, it's about like, yes, samurai, code, and the hypocrisy of it, but it's so much more than that. And it really annoys me when some people kind of reduce it to that it's only about the samurai, even though it's about so much more, like I have said so many times on my channel. But Samurai Rebellion is amazing. Guaidan is one of the most beautiful films ever. The Inheritance is one great film that many people don't talk about. But I actually am still very much lacking with these other films here in the bottom, that I haven't really seen these ones, unfortunately. I know that Ronin, I think he really likes this one, Inn of Evil, so I'm looking forward to watching that. And then I've heard great things about The Fossil and Black River, for example. But even though my experience with him is pretty limited in the end, but again, all of these films that I have seen from him are pretty much masterpieces. So, and these are The Human Condition and Harakiri are like the masterpieces of masterpieces. So they are among the greatest of all time, and again, very very important to me. But yeah, his aesthetic is incredibly meticulous and beautiful. Love it. And the types of themes that he tackles in his films, they really connect with me and my own interests and things that I think about a lot. So yeah, he kind of connects with me on every possible level. So yeah, absolutely love Masaki Kobayashi. Yeah. Then we have Kijū Yoshida, or sometimes called Yoshishige Yoshida. And sadly, he's a filmmaker that not many people kind of have seen his films, and not many people even know of him. And I often feel like that I'm the only one who is constantly championing him on my YouTube channel, even though I know Ronin has watched like a couple of his films, and I think Steve for Films mentioned Woman of the Lake or showed it in one of his videos. But I absolutely adore Yoshida's films. I mean, I even have Heroic Purgatory as one of my top 10 films of all time these days, and Eros Plus Massacre isn't far behind, and I also love Confessions Among Actresses and Woman of the Lake, and A Story Written with Water, and then all of the others that I have seen are good as well. I've seen 11 that he made, 25 in total. You can usually find even his lesser known films online. They aren't in the best possible quality, but they're still in watchable quality, usually, and with English subtitles. But he's a very challenging, very transgressive, very political filmmaker. He has this signature, very brutalist type of style, but I always say that it's brutally beautiful. because I absolutely love his style, and his kind of aesthetic is the main reason why I connect to his films. He's able to create this very dense and haunting atmosphere through his brutalist cinematography, and it's hard to describe in words, but it has an incredibly deep effect on me. And I absolutely love his artistry. He was such a genius filmmaker to me. His films are just endlessly fascinating and perplexing. I don't really claim to understand them that well. Although we did a podcast on Heroic Purgatory, it was 75 minutes. We tried to unpack the film, and I think we probably said some decent things about it, but then probably we missed lots of things as well. So yeah, but incredible filmmaker, and I can't really recommend him to everybody because he's the type of filmmaker that I think many people will hate. Unfortunately, he's definitely an acquired taste, but he was somebody that just connected with me immediately when I watched the longer cut of Aerospace Massacre for the first time in the beginning of the COVID pandemic, I think. So yeah, I just got him immediately, and it felt like he was like a missing link in my life or something like that. Yeah, I absolutely love him, and I'm gonna continue championing him as much as I can on my channel. Yeah. Then we have Sion Sono, uh, a great fun filmmaker who mixes art house and genre filmmaking together, I think, better than anybody else. He's made so many films. He's a very consistent filmmaker. I love most films that I have seen from him, and even my least favorite ones, I like them. I'm the only one that I hate is Prisoners of the Coastland. That was very disappointing, but everything else that I have seen, I've at least liked, and again, many of them I have loved. And he has this very special ability to make films that are so much fun to watch, so fast paced, so insane in every possible level. But at the same time, those films aren't insane and fun in a stupid, turn your brain down like way, but or turn your brain off way, but they manage to still pack lots of interesting themes and lots of things to think about, even with all that insanity and all that fun that is to be had with his films. And not many filmmakers can do like fun genre stuff and interesting thought-provoking art house stuff together. So that's great. And he also has a very versatile visual style, so he uses lots of crazy handheld stuff in many of his films, but then he can also do that methodical still shot style like he did in his sci-fi film Whispering Star, and that's basically like slow cinema, which is crazy that he can do so many different things that he can do, like sci-fi, slice of life, slow cinema, but then he can do something as crazy like Why Don't You Play in Hell and Love Exposure. Yeah, not many people have that type of range with their style. Yeah. But again, some of my favorites from him are Love Exposure, Why Don't You Play in Hell, The Forest of Love, Deep Cut. This one you can watch on Netflix, and the Deep Cut is the longer cut, the kind of mini TV show cut. Love and Peace. I absolutely love that. Yeah, those are my favorites, but I'm also a big fan of films like Strange Circus, Himitsu, Anti-Porno, and The Whispering Star, for example. Yeah, but great filmmaker. Then we have another one of the three big directors. So we have Kenji Mizoguchi, probably the, no, I mean not probably, but definitely the darkest and bleakest artist out of the three big Japanese directors, Ozu, Mizoguchi, and Kurosawa. And we have all three on the top 10, by the way, so yeah. But Mizoguchi was a director that whose work didn't connect with me immediately, although I could instantly see that His films were great, but I struggled with them at first. But then as I've gotten older and as my taste has developed and as I have learned more about films, I've truly fallen in love with Mizoguchi's films. And just like Kobayashi, his films are extremely layered and deep. They touch both like class, again gender issues and dynamic. They look at the toxic patriarchy in Japanese society, the toxic conservatism in Japanese society, and okay, the place of women in Japanese society, very important themes, and he looks at those themes in such a deep and interesting and bleak way. But I also absolutely love his aesthetic, and maybe because his films are so, again, deep thematically and so bleak in terms of the story and the narratives, sometimes I feel like people forget how amazing his visual style is, like the framing of the shots is absolutely incredible in films like The Life of Oharu and Sancho the Bailiff and Ugetsu Monogatari. Those three are, by the way, my favorites, along with The Crucified Lover. So sometimes this film is called Story from Chikamatsu. Yeah. But yeah, he's incredible, like black and white contrast, those huge, bleak, alienating shots are just incredible, and I really love his aesthetic. And out of the big three, his aesthetic is probably my second favorite out of the after Ozu, and third is Kurosawa. But all three had great aesthetics in their own way, and also very different aesthetic styles. Also very consistent director. I have seen 13 of his films, so I still have many more to watch. But he already had, again, great style and great skill in his early work. But then I think his 50s stuff, like again the famous three here, are just the best films. But then The Story of the Last Chrysanthemum, Street of Shame are, for example, amazing films. Then, if I had to mention a couple of maybe a bit more underrated ones, I would say Woman of the Night and Miss Oyu. Miss Oyu especially, those are incredible films, and I think could be added to my favorites list after a rewatch. Yeah. This one is probably the latest one I watched, I think, The Water Magician, one of his early ones, and this was very interesting as well, although this one didn't have his aesthetic prowess, but this was interesting in terms of the themes and the story. Yeah. But what an incredible filmmaker. Absolutely love him. Yeah. Then we have Hirokazu Kore-eda, one of the modern masters and maybe my favorite filmmaker working today, along with Sono, or is Sono working today, because he had that scandal and he turned out to be quite a piece of shit, unfortunately. So I don't know if he's still working with film after that scandal, but anyway, Kore-eda is definitely up there as possibly my favorite director working today. I've seen 13 films from him. Yeah, I know he doesn't like to be compared to Ozu, but of course his films have a bit of a same effect on me, that they are about families and relationships and friendships and kind of the beauty of everyday life. And yeah, his films are incredibly beautiful in terms of the aesthetic, but also the humanist stories and the humanist portrayal of life. Yeah, absolutely love his films. So some of my favorites from him are Still Walking. We did a podcast on that. We also did podcast about Like Father, Like Son and Maporoshi. And yeah, those were fun to talk about. And those three are my favorites, along with Nobody Knows. Yeah, that's my top four. In whatever order, I don't know what order it would be. I'm also a big fan of Afterlife and Monster and Shoplifters. Broker was quite good. Our Little Sister was quite good. After the Storm was good. Airdoll, very different but very good as well. I Wish, really good film. The Third Murder might be my least favorite one, but still a decent movie. And I appreciate that in some of these later films he's tried to go outside of his comfort zone a bit and try some new things. And I'm really looking forward to watching these mini TV series that he made, the Makanai, Cooking for the Maiko House, and then Asura. These are available on Netflix, so and I currently have Netflix, so I might watch those soon. Yeah, but what a great filmmaker, a very accessible and universal filmmaker. Then we have Shūji Terayama, one of my favorite experimental filmmakers. Pastoral to Die in the Country, when I watched it for the third time earlier this year for our podcast. Yeah, then I realized even more what a great filmmaker Terayama was and what a great film this is. Yeah. Yeah, his films have crazy aesthetics with these beautiful, flamboyant, crazy colors. His films can be quite campy, but in a really good way. They are very radical, very transgressive. They tackle taboo subjects like incest and violence. Yeah. And he was one of the most important filmmakers of the Japanese New Wave, and as you can see, one of my favorites from my favorite period in film history. Yeah. But the thing that pulls me in the most with his films is the great experimental, colorful aesthetic, because I love colorful films, I love colorful art, and one of my least favorite things about contemporary cinema is the kind of muted colors and how filmmakers make everything gray and brown and they don't use color anymore. That's something that I really hate about much of the contemporary cinema landscape, but of course there are always exceptions. And if you want to see Klaus Kinski with a crazy Japanese filmmaker watch Fruits of Passion, that's pretty interesting. I think sometimes this has been on movie, so maybe it's there now too. An Emperor Tomato Ketchup. Great film. I always wonder whether the band Stereolab, because they have a album called Emperor Tomato Ketchup, which is a good album. I always wonder, did they get the name from this, or is it some like weird coincidence or something? But I don't know. You can let me know if you know anything about it. But Terayama, he mostly made short films, but he made quite a few features as well. But both his short films and features are great. But some of my favorites from him are, again, Pastoral to Die in the Country, Throw Away Your Books, Rally in the Streets, Farewell to the Ark. Yeah, those three, and then Grass Labyrinth is his best short film, I think, an absolutely incredible film. Yeah. What a great filmmaker. Then this is the director that wasn't on the top 10 last time, although he kind of got in the list like just little bit, like maybe month after that video, because I watched at that period like many of his films. So yeah, but it's Nobuhiko Obayashi, an incredible, very unique filmmaker who makes these whimsical, colorful, weird, hypnotic, funny but touching and very humanist types of films. Yeah. And while he is an art house director and while his films can be even quite complex in terms of the narratives and everything, but at the same time his films are a bit goofy, very nostalgic and sentimental. So his films are actually very accessible, and I sometimes say that they kind of mix like lowbrow and highbrow together, because some of his like the stories are quite syrupy and again nostalgic and romantic, in a way stupid, but his style is just so incredible and so sincere and so humanist that he manages to make those types of trashier things, like he manages to make them like more beautiful and more artsy, you could say, and more complicated than they are. So I love that about him. Yeah. And his films are very optimistic, And that's one of the things that I love about them. Yeah. Although not all of his films are optimistic, like his Motorbiker Island gets quite dark in the end, for example, but for the most part, you can see that he really believes in humanity, even though, of course, some of his films, like he made some anti-war stuff, that you can see that he was also disappointed in humanity in many ways, but he still believed that we could strive towards something better. But yeah, some of my favorites from him are Hausu, his Motorbiker Island, Hanagatami, absolutely incredible film. Um, where is it? Chizuko's younger sister might be my favorite one. Or Miss Lonely, that's such an incredible one too. And then many others as well. Many of his films are available in the Internet Archive website. I think Criterion Channel has some also. Sometimes you can find them on YouTube and Rare Film as well. And also a decent chunk of them are available on Blu-ray these days too. So there are quite a few ways to watch his films, but I hope that even more of them get restored and get more accessible, especially with better prints. Yeah, but love him a lot. Then we have the great Kurosawa Akira, who was my gateway into Japanese films. And I have seen all of his films except the one that's not available anywhere, which is this one, Those Who Make Tomorrow. I've sometimes heard that it's available in some like museum or something, but that's like the only way to watch it. So it's kind of locked up somewhere, but so it's not like completely lost, I think, but for some reason it's never distributed anywhere. And I could be wrong about that because I've just heard about it in some like forum or maybe Hero Letterboxd or something, so that might be inaccurate, but you can let me know if you know more about that. But he had a very long career. His early stuff is quite mediocre, not bad, though. But then he finds his stride quite early on in the late 40s, and then he actually becomes a very consistent filmmaker who made many great films across a few different genres, whether it's the samurai films or the thrillers, or then the kind of, you could say, drama films like Ikiru. Yeah. So he was a fairly versatile filmmaker, even though there are many things that kind of stay the same in many of his films, like the fact that he had like a that he always had male characters and he didn't have many women in his films for some reason. So that's one like a thorough line in his films. And then another thing is that his films are always very simple, no matter what genre he worked in. And I think he even had that quote that he believed that a film should always be simple or something like that. I don't remember the exact quote, but he said something like that that film should be something that everybody can connect to. So that's why they should be easily understandable and something like that. Yeah, which I disagree with, to be honest, but I can kind of see where he's coming from. Yeah, and I believe that art should be accessible to everybody and something that everybody consumes. But I think that doesn't mean that we should overly simplify art and dump it down to people just so everybody can understand it. But yeah, anyway. But yeah, he was my gateway, so he was very important to me. But as I've grown older, watched more films, I've kind of noticed many things in his films that I also have problems with, like the constant exploration of masculinity. I find that kind of boring, that you have to have these strong men in every single film. Like I've talked about this in every single video recently, so I don't have to go through it again in more detail. And I also think some of his films could have a bit more depth to them, but again, he wanted to make his films simple, so it was a kind of a deliberate deliberate choice. Yeah, sorry for the stutter there. But even with those some of those criticisms that I have for him, I still love many of his films, and I have nostalgia for him and lots of respect for him because he innovated so much, he influenced so much, and again, he made many great films that I will watch many times in the future. But at the same time, sometimes I find his reputation a bit annoying because so many people reduce Japanese cinema to just Akira Kurosawa, even though there's so much more to discover. And I think there are many filmmakers who made better films. Like I think Harakiri is like a meal at the best restaurant in Tokyo, while Seven Samurai is like roadkill in comparison to Harakiri. Is like the dead squirrel that you find next to highway, while Harakiri is the best meal you will ever have in the best restaurant in Tokyo. But even though Seven Samurai is roadkill, it's still a great movie and I still love that movie, but just in comparison to Harakiri, it's like roadkill. Yeah. And I know I'm gonna get crucified for that, but I just wanna be honest in my channel. Yeah. But if I go through some of my favorites, Seven Samurai, Rashomon, The Hidden Fortress, Red Beard, There's Usala. Well, those are my top five. Then Throne of Blood would just be behind them. Yeah. But a great filmmaker, great career, but I have some problems with his filmography, although some of my problems with him mostly kind of come from the overly eager fan base who kind of overhype his films instead of his actual films and the quality of his films. So, yeah. But anyway, let's move on. Yeah, this is gonna be a very long video. I think I'm gonna speed run through the kind of 11 to 20. But yeah, so the last one in the top 20 is Nagisa Ōshima, another great Japanese new wave filmmaker who I love a lot. I've seen 16 films from him, so I still have some blind spots like Night and Fog in Japan and Diary of a Shinjuku Thief. Those are the big blind spots, but I know Diary of a Shinjuku Thief is in the Internet Archive website, so I've been meaning to watch it. But Nagisa Ōshima is one of those filmmakers that never did the same film twice. He always tried something new. He always changed his style and always changed the subject matter that he tackled. And that's the thing that I love about his films. His films are very transgressive, very challenging, very political. They play with the narrative, they tackle taboo subjects. The aesthetics can be fairly experimental as well. Yeah. And he tackled for example, again, the changing political landscape in Japan in his films. Lots of his films tackle human sexuality from many different angles, like in Taboo, it explores queerness in a kind of patriarchal setting, and that's one of my favorite films from him. Then, of course, In the Realm of the Senses has that nymphomaniac woman, and that's a pretty crazy movie. Yeah. But some of my favorites from him are Death by Hanging, again, Taboo, or I always call it Kohatto, and Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence. But I also love The Man Who Left His Will on Film, Empire of Passion, and Boy. I think Boy would be a great introduction to his films because it's a bit more of a simple, accessible movie, and more traditionally emotional, you could say, but a great filmmaker. So that was the top 10. Now we get into the rest. So we have Takeshi Kitano. And even though he wasn't in the top 10, I still consider him to be one of my all-time favorite directors because, again, Japanese cinema is so deep that, again, there are more than 10 directors that I consider all-time favorite directors. So yeah. And up until recently, I had seen all of his films, but then now that he has some new films out, I haven't seen those ones. So I haven't seen Broken Rage or Kubi. But I'm looking forward to watching them. But with Kitano, I absolutely love his painterly aesthetic, the hypnotic vibe of his films. It's so beautiful. I love the Joe Hisaishi scores in his films. I love both his thrillers, but also the more drama type of films, and I love the kind of mix in Hanabi of that thriller and the drama element there. It's so beautiful and contemplative. Absolutely love Hanabi, one of my favorite movies, and also love Hikuchiro and many of the others. But yeah, amazing director. Then we have Kiyoshi Kurosawa, who I actually now think that he's the more sophisticated and you could say more interesting Kurosawa, even though Akira is still a bit higher on this list. But he's of course known as the horror and thriller filmmaker, but he also made other types of films, like more drama type of films as well. But usually even his films that go a bit outside the thriller and horror genres, they still have thriller elements to them, like Tokyo Sonata does. But my favorites from him are Tokyo Sonata and Charisma, but I'm also a big fan of Cure, Retribution, and Pulse. Yeah, and many other good films here as well. I think his kind of golden period was from the mid to late 90s up to mid 2000s, but even his more recent work has been very interesting and good, even though a bit more mainstream, you could say. But he has such a beautiful ability for creating dark and disturbing and haunting atmosphere. Not many people have that ability to create that great atmosphere. So yeah, very atmospheric, very interesting director. Yeah. Then we have Ryūsuke Hamaguchi. I can't wait for his upcoming film because it sounds like it's gonna become a new favorite, although hopefully my expectations aren't too high. But he is kind of like the Japanese Eric Rohmer. His films are about people and their everyday life, very much of that slice of life genre. He focuses on human communication in many of his films and human relationships and all the minutiae and all the simple details there. But even though his films are narratively usually quite simple, they pack lots of interesting themes. And they are great explorations of the human condition. And so many great characters in his films. You really relate to them because they feel like actual people. Also love his simple but beautiful and effective visual style. Yeah, absolutely love Hamaguchi, and I think if he continues making this quality of films, yeah, he will probably go even higher on the list in the future. He's also very similar to Hong Sang-soo, so if you like Hong Sang-soo, I think you will like Hamaguchi as well. Then we have Mikio Naruse, not Naruse. I hear many people say Naruse, but that's not how you pronounce Japanese. It's Naruse. Yeah. But anyway, incredible classic filmmaker. I sometimes say that he is kind of somewhere in between of Ozu and Mizoguchi. That some of his films, some of the narrative feel quite like Ozu films, but then he brings that bleakness and that's a bit of that style from Mizoguchi. So that's why I gonna say that he's between them, as he kind of, some of his stuff feels a bit more like Mizoguchi and some of it a bit more like Ozu. I mean, The Sound of the Mountain, which is one of my favorites from him, is like a very Ozu-esque film. But then I think something like When a Woman Ascends the Stairs feels a bit more like Mizoguchi. But he focuses lots on women in his films. He explores the post-war Japanese society in his later work a lot. He also started in the 1930s already, so he had like he worked for like 35 years or something like that. So his films from the beginning to end, like there are certain similarities in terms of the subject matter, but again, the style changes a bit. And from what I've seen, I prefer the later stuff, definitely the stuff from the 50s and 60s to the early stuff. And my two favorite films from him are Sound of the Mountain and Floating Clouds, but then Yearning, When a Woman Ascends the Stair, and Two in the Shadow aren't far behind. So I would definitely highly recommend these films here in the top row. Yeah. But great filmmaker, I think he might go up in the future on this list. Then I'll just mention him very quickly. Hayao Miyazaki from Studio Ghibli, an incredible animator, incredible filmmaker who makes very simple but very beautiful films that work really well for both kids and adults. And these films are very mature for children's films and for animated films. Like these films are actually way more mature than most kind of mainstream films that are made mostly for adults and for older people. And the animation is beautiful, the music is always beautiful in these films, although maybe one kind of slight problem that I have with Miyazaki's work is that it kind of gets a bit repetitive, and I kind of wish that he would change the animation up a little bit. Even though again I love the animation, but it sometimes feels repetitive when the main character always feels like it's the same character, even though it's the same, even though it's a different character, because he always kind of designs the characters in the same way. But that's a very slight problem that I have. But yeah, many great films. My favorites are My Neighbor Totoro and Kiki's Delivery Service, but I also love Spirited Away, Howl's Moving Castle, and Princess Mononoke, for example, and Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind. Yeah. Then we have Shinya Tsukamoto, who is very interesting filmmaker who always works with very small budgets, but that doesn't really hold him back. He is a very transgressive filmmaker. He's kind of like the Japanese David Cronenberg, although I very much prefer Tsukamoto to Cronenberg, as I'm not the biggest Cronenberg fan, although again, like his films, like many of his films, but I'm not like a fanatic fanboy as most people in the community are. But Tsukamoto, on the other hand, I like a lot, even though maybe I don't even like Tsukamoto as quite as much as many other people do. Yeah. But I absolutely love Kotoko. We did an interesting podcast on that one too. Then my second favorite one is Gemini. And this film actually really reminds me of Terayama's work that I already talked about Terayama. And I think both Tsukamoto and Sono have got lots of influence from the Japanese new wave stuff. So he has probably watched Terayama's films, so he probably gets lots of influence from there. Yeah. But very interesting films. Yeah. Then we have Hiroshi Teshigahara. So I haven't seen that many Teshigahara, only three. But Woman in the Dunes and The Face of Another are some of the best films I've ever seen, so that's why I kind of could justify putting him here. And then I've seen Antonio Gaudi, which is very good. And I'm very much looking forward to watching Pitfall, The Man Without a Map, and Ryūsuke, for example. Yeah. But another Japanese new wave filmmaker, very experimental. His films are quite dark, and both of these films are adaptations from Kobo Abe novels, which I sadly haven't read, but I want to read them. I did read one Japanese book recently called No Longer Human by Osamu Dazai, which I absolutely love. And I also ordered some books, and a couple of them are Japanese, so I'm kind of getting into Japanese literature more and more as well now. Hopefully I can talk about that on my channel later on, but anyway, yeah, I love these two films a lot. But yeah, his films are also quite transgressive. They're weird, very atmospheric, beautifully shot. Yeah, very thought-provoking. Yeah, great stuff. Then a few more to go. Then we have Masahiro Shinoda, another new wave director. I've seen 7 out of his films, so I still have many more to watch. And he sadly passed away very recently. I think he was one of the last directors from that era who was still alive, so it's sad to see all of those greats passing away. Like Yoshida obviously passed away also like 3 years ago or something. So yeah, but at least they lived long lives and gave us lots of great films, so they won't be forgotten. But yeah, very interesting filmmaker, fairly varied filmmaker as well, although again his films tend to be quite weird and transgressive no matter the subject matter. But my favorite one is probably, where is it? It's actually quite underrated one, but I've mentioned it on my channel a few times, but it's called Ballad of Orin. An incredible masterpiece. It's on Criterion channel, so definitely check it out. It's very Mizoguchi-esque film, although kind of again modernized because of course the new wave directors tried to change the filmmaking landscape from the classic directors, yeah. But incredible film. Then Silence, based on the Shusaku Endo novel that I want to read. Yeah, really good. Pale Flower, of course, huge classic. Then this one I would highly recommend, Himiko. Actually love that film. Double Suicide, Under the Blossoming Cherry Trees are good films as well. Killers on Parade I liked a bit less, but still interesting. Haven't seen Demon Bond yet, or Samurai Spy, or With Beauty and Sorrow, or Assassination. Yeah, but lots of his films are available on the Criterion channel, and also some of it is available on Criterion physical media, like Demon Bond and Pale Flower, for example, and Double Suicide. Yeah, but great director, and I feel like his stuff will grow on me even more in the future. Then we have Yasujō Masumura, and I absolutely love this film, Red Angel, starring Ayako Wakao. Yeah, but I don't love him quite as much as Ronin does, but I like him a lot. And again, like I said, I think Red Angel is one of the greatest films ever made. And if I had watched this again, it might have ended up on my top 50 list that I did recently, because it's that level of, you'd have one of the best war films of all time, I think. Top 10 at least, possibly top 5. That's how much I like it. Yeah. And one of the kind of things about his filmography is that the rest hasn't kind of lived up to Red Angel for me, even though I've kind of liked all the films that I have seen from him, but Red Angel really stands up as the greatest one. But I had great time with Iretsumi, like beautifully shot film, really good. The Blue Sky Maiden I had a great time with, very Douglas Sirk-esque film. This one I could see myself watching many times in the future. It's definitely my type of film. Blind Beast, very good, very transgressive film. Giants and Toys, this one did kind of blow me away as much as it has many other people, but I still enjoyed it. Then Seisaku's Wife I watched recently, and that was a very, very good film. Would make a good double bill with like some of Mizoguchi's films, for example, so that was very good as well. But Red Angel definitely is the shining star for me from his filmography, but very interesting new wave director. Yeah. Then the last director is another anime director who died way too young, sadly, but it's Satoshi Kon. And if you want to see a good version of Inception, watch Paprika, which is incredible and beautiful. Perfect Blue, great. Tokyo Godfathers is probably my favorite one, actually, even though it's maybe the most simple and accessible one, but it really connected with me emotionally. Millennium Actress is really good. The only thing I haven't seen yet is Paranoia Agent, which is this mini show. I know many people love that one, like again my friend the Nerdlist recommended it to me. For example, he really loves that, so yeah. But yeah, very interesting director who makes these mindfuck types of films, like mostly these first two, and then he also made these bit more kind of beautiful and accessible and universal films like Tokyo Godfathers and Millennium Actress, so he had good range as well. Yeah, but sadly he didn't get to make that much stuff because he again died in 2010. Yeah, but yeah, good stuff. Need to rewatch many of those things and then watch Paranoia Agent. But yeah, that was my top 20. Of course, there are many other great Japanese directors as well, and maybe I forgot somebody because I compiled this list quite quickly. But let me know what you think of these filmmakers, and let me know your favorite Japanese filmmakers, and you can also give me any recommendations. But yeah, anyway, thanks for watching. Don't drink Coke at all. Also check out Roning's Japanese list. Sayonara and arigato gozaimashita.